Chapter 1. The birthday that changed everything. Marcus Duran had never been the kind of man who expected fireworks on his birthday. A quiet dinner, maybe a slice of cake, and a good movie. That was his idea of celebration. 30 was supposed to be a milestone, sure, but Marcus wasn't the type to demand attention. He was steady, practical, and, if you asked his friends, a little too forgiving. But forgiveness had its limits. The Thursday of his 30th birthday started like any other. He woke up early, hit the gym before work, and spent the day answering emails and fixing problems that weren't his fault. By 5:30, he was driving home with the same thought he'd had for weeks. Something's off with Rachel. He tried to ignore it. Tried to chalk it up to stress, wedding planning, the usual excuses people make when they don't want to face the truth. But the truth had been creeping in like a slow leak, and tonight, it was about to flood the room. Marcus parked outside their apartment complex, the sky painted in streaks of orange and purple. He sat in the car for a moment, staring at the dashboard clock. 6:02 p.m. Rachel usually got home around 6:30. Plenty of time for him to shower and change. He wasn't expecting a party. Just her, maybe a card, maybe dinner. He'd even bought a bottle of wine, just in case. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Marcus tossed his keys on the counter and headed straight for the shower. Warm water, familiar routine. He let it wash away the day, the doubts, the nagging voice that whispered, "She's different now." By the time he stepped out, towel slung low on his hips, he felt lighter. He dressed in jeans and a soft gray t-shirt. The one Rachel said made his shoulders look good. He smiled at the memory, then frowned when he realized the apartment was still empty. No big deal. She was probably stuck in traffic. Marcus flipped on the TV, settled into the couch, and waited. 7 o'clock came and went. Then 8. Then 9. By 10:30, Marcus wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. He was done. The door burst open like a scene from a rom-com gone wrong. Rachel stumbled in, laughing, her arm clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. The smell hit him first. Alcohol, sweat, and something floral that wasn't hers. "Marcus," she sang, kicking off her heels. "You will not believe the night I had." Marcus muted the TV. "Try me." She flopped onto the couch beside him, her hair a mess of curls and hairspray. "So, me and Jenna." "Oh my God, Jenna is wild. We went dancing. Like, full-on club dancing. I haven't done that in forever." Marcus nodded slowly. "Sounds fun." It was. She grinned, oblivious to the tension in the room. "You should have come." He stared at her, really stared, and wondered if she even remembered what day it was. "Where were you?" "I told you, dancing. Jenna said I needed a night out. You know, before the wedding. Girls' night." She laughed again, then caught his expression. "What?" Marcus leaned back, his voice calm, almost too calm. "Do you know what today is?" Rachel blinked. "Thursday." He smiled without humor. "Yeah, Thursday. Anything else?" Her brow furrowed, lips parting as if the answer might float into her mouth. When it didn't, she shrugged. Work was crazy. "What?" Marcus stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out a suitcase. "Marcus." Her voice cracked like thin ice. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. He folded shirts with methodical precision, slid them into the bag like he had all the time in the world. "Marcus." She followed him in, panic rising. "Talk to me." He zipped the suitcase halfway before looking at her. "You know, I thought about reminding you. I really did. But then I realized something." His tone was even, almost gentle. "If I have to remind the person who claims to love me enough to marry me, then what's the point?" Her face drained of color. "Oh my God. It's your, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't, exactly." He clicked the zipper shut. "You didn't." She grabbed his arm, desperate now. "I messed up, okay? I shouldn't be out at clubs now that I'm engaged." "I know that." Marcus nodded. "You're right. You shouldn't." Her grip loosened. "So we can fix this." He lifted the suitcase, meeting her eyes with a calm that scared her more than anger ever could. "No, you just showed me who you are. And I believe you." He walked past her, past the couch, past the life they'd built together. At the door, he paused, hand on the knob. "Marcus, please," she whispered, tears streaking her mascara. "Don't do this." He turned, his expression unreadable. "I didn't do this, Rachel." "You did." Then he was gone. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, texts, and guilt trips. Both families chimed in, voices overlapping like static. She made a mistake. You can't throw away 2 years. Think about the wedding. Think about the future. Marcus thought about it. Then he called them all to one location, a neutral ground, a coffee shop with bad lighting and worse music. He sat at the head of the table, calm as ever, and told the story. "She spent my 30th birthday at a club," he said simply. "Didn't even know it was my birthday. And if you think I'm going to marry someone who isn't curious enough to wonder when I was born, you don't know me at all." Silence fell like a curtain. No arguments. No excuses. Just the truth, sharp and undeniable. Marcus walked out of that coffee shop lighter than he'd felt in years. No anger. No regret. Just clarity. And a promise. Next time, I won't lose myself. If love knocks again, I'll answer. But I'll never change who I am to fit into someone else's life. Chapter 2. Marcus 2.0. 3 years later, Marcus Duran was the kind of man people described as well-rounded. Not because he was perfect, Marcus would laugh at that, but because he had a knack for trying everything at least once. His apartment looked like a sporting goods store collided with an art studio. A yoga mat rolled up in the corner, a half-finished painting leaning against the wall, a chessboard on the coffee table, and a guitar that hadn't been tuned in weeks. Marcus didn't care. He wasn't chasing mastery. He was chasing experience. Tonight, experience looked like a sizzling skillet and a recipe he'd found online titled Easy Weeknight Paella. Easy his foot. The rice was sticking, the shrimp looked suspiciously gray, and the smoke alarm was eyeing him like it was ready to ruin his evening. Marcus stirred the pan, muttering under his breath. How hard can this be? Rice, seafood, broth. Boom. Done. The rice clumped together like wet cement. He sighed, grabbed his phone, and scrolled through the recipe again. Step 4. Add saffron threads. Marcus stared at the tiny jar on the counter. Saffron threads looked like something you'd sweep off the floor after a craft project. He sprinkled them in anyway, because why not? He was committed now. The smoke alarm beeped once, a warning shot. Don't you dare, Marcus said, pointing his spatula at it like a sword. I've got this under control. The alarm beeped again. Marcus opened a window, waving a dish towel like a white flag. Fine. You win. Paella 1. Marcus, 0. He plated the mess anyway, because quitting wasn't his style. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and grimaced. Congratulations, Marcus. You've invented seafood-flavored regret. He laughed at himself, because that was the rule. If you're going to fail, fail with humor. Marcus carried his plate to the couch, flipping on a documentary about ancient civilizations. He liked documentaries. They made him feel like he was learning something while eating food that tasted like disappointment. As the narrator droned on about Mesopotamia, Marcus's mind wandered. 3 years since Rachel. 3 years of hobbies, adventures, and zero drama. He wasn't lonely. He had friends, a good job, and a calendar full of things that made him happy. Hiking trips, cooking classes, salsa lessons, though his hips still refused to cooperate. He'd kept his promise. Live fully, stay true to himself, and if love knocked, answer the door. But love hadn't knocked. Or maybe it had, and Marcus hadn't heard it over the sound of his blender during that ill-fated smoothie experiment. He smiled at the thought. If love wants in, it better ring the doorbell twice. The next morning, Marcus laced up his running shoes and hit the trail near his apartment. Crisp air, golden leaves crunching underfoot, the rhythmic thud of sneakers on dirt. It was his favorite way to clear his head. Halfway through his run, he slowed near the park's community board. A bright flyer caught his eye. Pottery for beginners, Saturday class. Make something beautiful. Marcus grinned. Pottery. Why not? He'd tried painting, woodworking, even origami. Disaster. Pottery sounded peaceful, therapeutic, and maybe, just maybe, less likely to involve a smoke alarm. He snapped a photo of the flyer and jogged home, already imagining himself shaping clay like a pro. Spoiler, Marcus had no idea what he was in for. Saturday arrived with the smell of wet clay and the hum of a dozen people chatting in a sunlit studio. Marcus walked in, sleeves rolled up, confidence high. How hard could pottery be? Clay, wheels spin. Boom. Done. He signed in, grabbed an apron, and found an empty wheel. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Linda, gave a quick demo. Marcus nodded like he understood everything. Pressure here, water there, steady hands. Easy. He slapped a lump of clay onto the wheel, pressed the pedal, and watched it spin. So far, so good. Then the clay wobbled. Marcus adjusted his grip. The clay wobbled harder. He added water. The clay turned into a slippery mess, spinning like it was auditioning for a tornado. Whoa. Marcus tried to steady it, but the clay had other plans. It launched off the wheel like a frisbee, landing with a wet splop on the floor. A laugh rang out behind him. Nice throw. You aiming for the Olympics? Marcus turned, and that's when he saw her. She was leaning against the next wheel, arms crossed, eyes sparkling with amusement. Dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a smudge of clay on her cheek like an accidental beauty mark. Her smile was warm, teasing, and entirely disarming. Marcus blinked. Oh yeah? Gold medal in clay discus. She laughed again, the sound light and easy. You might want to stick to bowls. Marcus grinned, recovering fast. Bowls are overrated. I'm going straight for abstract art. Looks more like abstract chaos. He chuckled, wiping his hands on his apron. Fair point. Linda swooped in, rescuing Marcus with a fresh lump of clay and a pep talk. But Marcus barely heard her. His attention kept drifting to the woman at the next wheel, who was now shaping her clay with effortless grace. Marcus didn't believe in fate. But if fate had a sense of humor, this was it. Chapter 3. Sparks and Sarcasm. Marcus had always believed first impressions were overrated. People were complicated. You couldn't sum them up in a handshake or a smile. But as he stared at the woman beside him, clay-streaked cheek, amused eyes, and a grin that could melt steel, Marcus wondered if maybe, just maybe, first impressions mattered more than he thought. She was laughing softly, shaping her clay into something that looked suspiciously like a vase. Meanwhile, Marcus's second attempt at pottery was wobbling like a drunk penguin. Okay, Marcus said, squinting at his wheel. Explain to me how yours looks like art, and mine looks like whatever this is. She glanced over, lips twitching. That's bold. Bold. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's the word you're going with. Well, I was going to say tragic, but I'm trying to be nice. Marcus chuckled, leaning back on his stool. Don't hold back on my account. I can take it. Good, she said, her tone teasing. Because that thing looks like it belongs in a museum of mistakes. Marcus laughed so hard his clay collapsed inward, creating a crater that could swallow small objects. Perfect. I'll call it existential hole. She snorted, covering her mouth with clay-streaked fingers. You're ridiculous. And you're, what's the word? Talented? Graceful? A pottery prodigy. She tilted her head, pretending to think. Or maybe I just read the instructions. Marcus grinned. Instructions are for people who fear adventure. Or for people who don't want clay flying across the room. He winced, remembering his earlier disaster. Fair point. Linda, the instructor, wandered by, offering Marcus a sympathetic smile. Remember, steady hands. Let the clay guide you. Marcus nodded solemnly. Let the clay guide me. Got it. The woman beside him smirked. Sounds like a fortune cookie. Your destiny lies in moist, spinning objects. Marcus intoned, adopting a mystical voice. She laughed again, and Marcus felt something shift, something light, something easy. He hadn't felt this in years. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, punctuated by Marcus muttering things like, stay upright, you little blob, and her occasional giggle. Finally, Marcus broke the quiet. So, he said casually, do you come here often? She shot him a look. Seriously? That's your line. What? It's a classic. It's a cliché. Classics are clichés that refuse to die. She shook her head, smiling. Fine. Yes, I've been here a few times. It's relaxing. Marcus nodded. Relaxing. Sure. If your definition of relaxing includes public humiliation. Hey, you're improving, she said, nodding at his clay. It almost looks like a bowl now. Almost, Marcus echoed. That's progress. She wiped her hands on her apron and extended one toward him. Elena. Marcus took her hand, warm and firm despite the clay residue. Marcus. Nice to meet you. Marcus, she said, her tone playful. Destroyer of clay. He grinned. Nice to meet you, Elena. Queen of symmetrical objects. The class ended with Marcus carrying something vaguely bowl-shaped and Elena cradling a vase that looked like it belonged in a boutique. They walked out together, the crisp air a welcome contrast to the earthy smell of clay. So, Elena said, adjusting her bag. Are you going to keep at it? Pottery. Marcus shrugged. Depends. Do they offer a class called How Not to Launch Clay Across the Room? She laughed. I think that's an advanced course. Figures. They reached the parking lot, and Marcus hesitated. He wasn't the type to force things, but something about Elena made him want to take a chance. Hey, he said, scratching the back of his neck. There's a cafe around the corner. Best coffee in town. You want to grab one? Elena studied him for a beat, then smiled. Sure, but only if you promise not to throw the cup. Marcus grinned. Deal. Chapter 4. Coffee and Chemistry. The cafe was tucked into a quiet corner of the street, the kind of place that smelled like roasted beans and warm pastries the moment you stepped inside. Marcus held the door open for Elena, who breezed in with a smile that made the dim lighting feel brighter. Wow, she said, glancing around. This place is cozy. Best coffee in town, Marcus replied, following her to the counter. And by best, I mean it doesn't taste like burnt toast. Elena laughed. High standards. Only for coffee, Marcus said. Everything else. I'm flexible. She raised an eyebrow. Flexible? Like pottery skills. Marcus grinned. Hey, I'm a work in progress. They ordered. Elena went for a caramel latte, Marcus for a black coffee because he claimed it was the purest form of truth. They found a small table by the window, sunlight spilling across the worn wood. So, Elena said, stirring her latte. What's your deal, Marcus? My deal. He leaned back, amused. That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Just curious. You show up at pottery class like you're auditioning for a reality show, and now you're inviting strangers for coffee. What's the story? Marcus chuckled. Strangers? Harsh. I thought we bonded over clay disasters. We did, she admitted, smiling. But still, what's your thing? Marcus considered his answer. He could go with something safe, something surface level. Or he could be honest. He chose honesty. My thing, he said slowly, is living. Trying stuff. Seeing what sticks. Elena tilted her head. That's vague. Okay, Marcus said, leaning forward. 3 years ago, I decided I wasn't going to waste time being someone else's idea of perfect. So now, I do things that make me curious. Pottery, hiking, salsa dancing. Don't ask about that one. Her eyes sparkled. Oh, I'm definitely asking about that one. Marcus groaned. Let's just say my hips have a mind of their own. And they're not team players. Elena laughed, the sound warm and easy. I like that, she said. Not the hips part, the living part. Marcus smiled. What about you? What's your thing? She hesitated, tracing the rim of her cup. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. Fair, Marcus said. Life's a work in progress. Like your bowl, she teased. Exactly, Marcus said, grinning. Miss Symmetry over here, throwing shade. They talked about everything and nothing. Favorite movies, worst jobs, the tragedy of overpriced avocados. Marcus learned Elena was a graphic designer who freelanced from home, loved old bookstores, and had a cat named Picasso who hated everyone except her. Picasso, Marcus said, amused. Let me guess, he's a tortured artist? More like a furry dictator, Elena replied. But he's cute, so he gets away with it. Marcus laughed, and for a moment, he forgot about the years of guardedness, the promise he'd made to never lose himself. With Elena, conversation felt effortless, like skipping stones across a calm lake. When they finally stepped outside, the afternoon sun had mellowed into gold. Marcus walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, heart doing something it hadn't done in a long time. Hoping. Well, Elena said, unlocking her door. This was fun. Fun. Marcus echoed. That's it. Fun. She smirked. Okay, fine. It was surprisingly fun. Marcus grinned. I'll take surprisingly. She slid into her car, then paused, leaning out the window. You know, there's a painting class next week. Ever tried that? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you inviting me? Maybe, she said, her tone playful. If you promise not to throw paint. Marcus chuckled. No promises. She laughed, started the engine, and drove off, leaving Marcus standing in the golden light with a smile he couldn't shake. Chapter 5. The first date fiasco. Marcus had never considered painting a high-risk activity. No sharp objects, no heavy lifting, no chance of bodily harm. At least, that's what he thought. But as he stood in front of a blank canvas with a brush in one hand and a palette in the other, he realized the real danger wasn't physical. It was humiliation. The studio smelled faintly of turpentine and ambition. Easels lined the room, each paired with a stool and a hopeful artist. Marcus glanced at Elena, who was already mixing colors like she'd been born with a brush in her hand. You look confident, Marcus said, eyeing her smooth strokes. Elena grinned. Fake it till you make it. Marcus chuckled. My motto too. Except mine usually ends with disaster. Like pottery? She teased. Exactly, Marcus said, dipping his brush into blue paint. Prepare to witness abstract genius. He dragged the brush across the canvas in what he hoped was a bold, artistic gesture. Instead, it looked like a toddler's tantrum in color. Elena peeked over and burst out laughing. Wow, that's something. Something profound, Marcus said solemnly. It represents the chaos of modern existence. It represents the chaos of your motor skills. Elena shot back, her eyes sparkling. Marcus laughed, and for a moment, the pressure melted away. He wasn't here to impress her with art. He was here to enjoy the mess, and maybe make her laugh again. Half an hour later, Marcus's canvas looked like a crime scene involving primary colors. Elena's, on the other hand, was shaping into a serene landscape, all soft blues and greens. Okay, Marcus said, stepping back. Mine's bold. Bold is one word, Elena said, biting back a smile. Unsettling is another. Marcus grinned. Art is supposed to provoke emotion. Fear is an emotion, she quipped. He laughed so hard he nearly knocked over his water cup. Which, of course, he did, sending a tidal wave across the table and straight onto Elena's canvas. Oh no, Marcus lunged for paper towels, but the damage was done. Her peaceful landscape now had a dramatic brown streak cutting through the sky like a meteor strike. Elena stared at it, then at Marcus, then burst out laughing. Well, that's one way to make it bold. Marcus groaned. I'm so sorry. I swear I'm not usually this destructive. Relax, she said, still laughing. It's just paint. Besides, now it's a collaboration. Marcus blinked. Collaboration? Yeah, Elena said, grabbing her brush and adding swirls around the streak. See? Now it's a storm. Adds drama. Marcus watched her transform the accident into art, and something about that, her ease, her humor, her refusal to let a mess ruin the moment, hit him square in the chest. By the end of class, Marcus's painting looked like a fever dream, and Elena's stormy landscape was oddly beautiful. They walked out together, the cool night air washing away the smell of paint. So, Marcus said, shoving his hands in his pockets, on a scale of 1 to Picasso, how bad was I? Elena smirked. Picasso would cry. Marcus laughed. Fair. They reached her car, and Elena paused, her smile softening. You know, most people would have panicked after ruining someone's painting. Marcus shrugged. Panic's overrated. Besides, you made it better. She tilted her head, studying him. You're different. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Different good or different weird? Both, she said, grinning. But mostly good. Marcus felt something warm settle in his chest. I'll take that. She slid into her car, then leaned out the window. Next time, maybe something less messy. Marcus grinned. Define less messy. She laughed, started the engine, and drove off, leaving Marcus standing under the streetlight with paint on his hands and a smile he couldn't shake. Chapter 6. Past shadows. The park was quiet, the kind of quiet that made conversations feel heavier and more honest. Marcus and Elena walked side by side along a winding path, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees in golden streaks. Neither of them spoke for a while, and Marcus found he didn't mind. Silence with Elena wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like a well-worn sweater. Elena broke it first. You know, she said, kicking at a stray leaf. I've been wondering something. Marcus glanced at her. Dangerous words. She smiled faintly. Why pottery? Why painting? Why all of it? Marcus shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, considering. He could give her the easy answer, because it's fun, but something about her tone told him she wanted more. And maybe, for the first time in years, he wanted to give more. 3 years ago, he began slowly. I walked out of an engagement. Elena's head turned sharply, eyes widening. Wow, that's big. Marcus nodded, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. It was. We'd been together for 2 years, engaged for 5 months. And then my 30th birthday came along. He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. She didn't remember. Elena stopped walking. Wait, she forgot your birthday? Marcus shrugged. Forgot. Ignored. Take your pick. She spent the night out dancing with her friends. Came home smelling like tequila and bad decisions. Elena winced. Ouch. Yeah. Marcus kicked at a pebble, watching it skitter across the pavement. I didn't yell. Didn't fight. Just packed a bag and left. Because if you have to remind someone who claims to love you about the one day that belongs to you, what's the point? Elena was quiet for a moment, her expression softening. That must have hurt. Marcus nodded. It did. But it taught me something. I'd spent 2 years trying to fit into her life, bending myself into shapes that weren't mine. And for what? So she could forget who I was. He looked at Elena then, really looked at her. So I made a promise. Next time, I won't lose myself. If love knocks, I'll answer. But I'll never change who I am to fit someone else's idea of perfect. Elena held his gaze, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. That's actually kind of amazing. Marcus smiled faintly. Amazing or stubborn? Both, she said, her lips curving. But mostly amazing. They resumed walking, the silence now heavier but not uncomfortable. Elena spoke first this time, her voice softer. For what it's worth. I get it. Marcus glanced at her. You do? She nodded, eyes on the horizon. I was with someone who made me feel small. Like everything I loved was silly. So I stopped doing those things. Stopped being me. And when it ended, I didn't even recognize myself. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Sounds familiar. Yeah. She smiled wryly. So now I paint. I take pottery classes. I drink caramel lattes without apologizing. Marcus chuckled. Rebel. Total rebel, she said, grinning. They reached a bench overlooking the lake, and Marcus gestured for her to sit. They watched the water ripple in the fading light, neither speaking for a long moment. Then Elena turned to him, her expression thoughtful. You know, she said, you're not what I expected. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? She shrugged. Someone. I don't know. Someone who takes himself too seriously. You look like that kind of guy. Marcus laughed. Wow. Brutal. Hey, I said look like, not are. She nudged his shoulder. Turns out you're funny. And weird. And kind of great. Marcus felt heat creep up his neck, and he was glad for the dimming light. I'll take that. Elena smiled, and for a moment, Marcus forgot about promises and past shadows. He just sat there, watching her laugh at something he said, and thought, maybe love doesn't knock. Maybe it sneaks in when you're busy living. Chapter 7. The Hobby Challenge. Marcus had learned 2 things about Elena in the past few weeks. 1. She had a talent for making chaos look charming. 2. She was competitive, quietly, playfully, but undeniably competitive. So when she suggested they try rock climbing together, Marcus didn't hesitate. He liked the challenge. He liked the idea of doing something outside his comfort zone. And, if he was honest, he liked the idea of spending more time with her. Even if it meant dangling from a wall like a confused spider. The climbing gym smelled faintly of chalk and determination. Brightly colored holds dotted the walls like candy, and Marcus stared up at them, wondering if he'd made a mistake. This looks fun, he said, eyeing a route that seemed designed for mountain goats. Elena grinned, tightening the straps on her harness. Fun and humbling. Marcus smirked. Humbling is my specialty. She laughed, handing him a chalk bag. Here, you'll need this. Marcus clipped it to his harness, trying to look like he knew what he was doing. Spoiler, he didn't. They started on an easy route, or what Elena called easy. Marcus wasn't convinced. He gripped the first hold, hauled himself up, and immediately realized 2 things. 1. Gravity was not his friend. 2. His arms were filing a formal complaint. Okay, Marcus muttered, clinging to the wall like a koala. This is fine. Totally fine. Doing great. Elena called from below, her tone suspiciously cheerful. Marcus glanced down. Bad idea. The floor looked very far away. Define great. You're still on the wall, she said, grinning. That counts. Marcus groaned, reaching for the next hold. His foot slipped, his heart lurched, and for one terrifying second, he thought he was about to reenact a cartoon fall. The harness caught him, jerking him back into place. Nice save. Elena laughed. Very graceful. Marcus dangled there, panting. Graceful is not the word I'd use. What word would you use? Survival, Marcus said, hauling himself back onto the wall. Pure survival. By the time he reached the top, his arms felt like noodles and his pride was somewhere near the floor. Elena, of course, scampered up her route like a mountain sprite, ringing the bell at the top with a triumphant grin. Show off, Marcus muttered when she rappelled down. Hey, she said, unhooking her harness. You made it. That's what matters. Marcus grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. Barely. Barely still counts, she said, handing him a water bottle. Besides, you were very determined. Determined to not die, Marcus said, taking a long drink. Big difference. Elena laughed, and Marcus felt that now familiar warmth settle in his chest. He liked this, liked her teasing, liked the way she made even failure feel like fun. They sat on a bench near the exit, catching their breath. Elena stretched her legs, her expression thoughtful. You know, she said, you could have picked something easier for our next adventure. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Our next adventure? Obviously, she said, smirking. Unless you're giving up. Marcus grinned. Never. Good, she said, standing and slinging her bag over her shoulder. Because I have ideas. Marcus groaned. That sounds ominous. Elena winked. You'll love it. Marcus watched her walk toward the door, and for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't expected. Anticipation. Not for the next hobby, not for the next challenge, but for whatever this was becoming. Chapter 8. Friends' Interference. Marcus had always considered himself a low-drama guy. He liked his peace, his hobbies, and his circle of friends, small, reliable, and mostly sane. Mostly. Which was why, when his phone buzzed with a message from his best friend, Tyler, that read, "Game night. My place. Bring your new girlfriend." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. He stared at the screen, muttering, "Girlfriend? Really?" He typed back, "She's not my girlfriend." Tyler replied instantly, "Yet." Marcus groaned. Tyler was relentless. He'd been on Marcus's case ever since the pottery class incident, which Marcus had foolishly mentioned during a casual conversation. Tyler had sniffed romance like a bloodhound and refused to let go. By the time Marcus arrived at Tyler's apartment that evening, Elena was walking beside him, laughing at his muttered complaints. "Your friends sound enthusiastic," she said, adjusting her scarf. "That's one word for it," Marcus replied. "Another word is invasive." She grinned. "Relax. I'm good with people." "Good," Marcus said dryly. "Because they're going to interrogate you like you're applying for a security clearance." Tyler's apartment was buzzing with voices and the smell of pizza. Marcus barely stepped inside before Tyler appeared, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. "Marcus." Tyler clapped him on the back, then turned to Elena with exaggerated charm. "And you must be the famous pottery queen." Elena laughed. "Wow. Word travels fast." "Fast?" "Marcus practically wrote a novel about you," Tyler said, ignoring Marcus's glare. "Come on, everyone's dying to meet you." Marcus muttered under his breath, "This is why I don't share details." The group gathered around the coffee table, a colorful mess of board games and snacks. Introductions flew, jokes bounced, and Marcus found himself relaxing, mostly because Elena handled it all like a pro. She laughed at Tyler's teasing, traded witty remarks with his girlfriend, and even joined in when someone suggested a round of truth or dare, game night edition. Marcus groaned. "This is a bad idea." Elena smirked. "Scared?" "Not scared," Marcus said. "Just aware of the risks." "Risks make life interesting," she said, eyes glinting. Marcus shook his head, smiling despite himself. "Your trouble." The game started innocently enough. Truth questions about favorite movies, harmless dares like singing a line from a song. Then Tyler, of course, decided to stir the pot. "Marcus," he said, grinning like a villain. "Truth. What's the most romantic thing you've ever done?" Marcus froze, every eye on him. He considered lying, deflecting, making a joke, but Elena's curious gaze held him in place. "Honestly," Marcus said slowly. Walking away, the room went quiet for a beat. Tyler blinked. "Oh, what?" Marcus shrugged. "From someone who didn't respect me. It wasn't flowers or candlelight, but it was the most honest thing I've ever done." Elena's expression softened, something flickering in her eyes. Tyler, sensing he'd wandered into emotional territory, quickly moved on to the next victim. Later, as they left Tyler's apartment, Elena slipped her hands into her coat pockets, her voice thoughtful. "Walking away," she said quietly. "That's kind of romantic." Marcus glanced at her, surprised. "You think so?" She nodded. "It means you know your worth." "That's rare." Marcus felt something warm settle in his chest. "Thanks." She smiled, and for a moment, the night felt charged, not with chaos or laughter, but with something deeper. Something Marcus wasn't sure he was ready to name yet. Chapter 9. The almost goodbye. Marcus stared at the email on his laptop like it was a ticking bomb. Subject: exciting opportunity, San Diego office expansion. The words blurred as his mind raced. A promotion, a bigger role, a chance to lead a new team. It was everything he'd worked for, except it was 3 states away. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. San Diego. Sunshine, beaches, and 1,000 miles between him and Elena. When they met for coffee later that week, Marcus tried to act normal. Tried to laugh at her jokes, tease her about her obsession with caramel lattes. But the weight of the decision sat heavy in his chest, and Elena noticed. "You're quiet," she said, stirring her drink. "That's new." Marcus forced a smile. "Just work stuff." "Work stuff?" Her brow furrowed. "Bad work stuff?" "Not bad," Marcus said slowly. "Just big." Elena tilted her head, studying him. "Big how?" Marcus hesitated. He wanted to tell her. Wanted to lay it all out. The offer, the move, the fact that he didn't want to lose what they were building. But the words tangled in his throat, and what came out was vague and clumsy. "Big like, changes," he said. "Maybe." Elena's smile faltered. "Changes." Marcus nodded, and in that moment, he saw it, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. The walls going up. He hated it, but he didn't know how to stop it. They walked out of the cafe in silence, the easy rhythm they'd built suddenly fractured. At her car, Elena turned to him, her voice quiet. "Marcus, if you're looking for an exit, just say so." The words hit him like a punch. "What?" "No, that's not. Because I've been here before," she said, her tone steady but her eyes betraying the hurt. Someone pulling away without saying why. Marcus shook his head, panic rising. "Elena, I'm not pulling away. I just what?" she asked, her voice sharp now. "Just keeping me in the dark?" Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He wanted to explain, wanted to tell her that this wasn't about leaving her. It was about not knowing how to stay without losing himself. But the moment slipped through his fingers like wet clay. Elena exhaled, her breath fogging in the cool air. "You know what? Forget it." She slid into her car, started the engine, and drove off, leaving Marcus standing there with his heart pounding and his words stuck in his throat. That night, Marcus sat in his apartment, staring at the half-finished chess game on his coffee table. He hated the silence, hated the way one conversation had unraveled weeks of laughter and connection. He picked up his phone, thumb hovering over Elena's name. He could call. He could fix this. But what would he say? Stay even if I go. Wait for me while I figure out who I am. Marcus set the phone down, his chest tight. For the first time in years, he felt the old fear creeping back, the fear of losing something good because he didn't know how to hold it without breaking it. Chapter 10. The Grand Gesture. Marcus had never been a fan of cliches. Roses, candlelight, skywriting. None of that felt like him. If he was going to fight for Elena, it had to be real. It had to be Marcus. So he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the chessboard he'd abandoned days ago, and an idea began to take shape. Not flowers. Not jewelry. Something that said, I see you. I know you. And I'm not walking away. The next afternoon, Elena opened her apartment door to find Marcus standing there, slightly out of breath, holding a box. Not a fancy box. A plain wooden one, scuffed at the edges, like it had a story. Elena, he said, his voice steady but his heart pounding. Can I come in? She hesitated, arms crossed, eyes guarded. Marcus, just 5 minutes, he said. If you still want me gone after that, I'll leave. Her silence stretched long enough for him to feel every second. Then, finally, she stepped aside. Marcus set the box on her coffee table and opened it. Inside were pieces of his life, small, imperfect, but honest. A cracked pottery bowl, a paintbrush with dried blue streaks, a photo of the climbing wall, his chalk-covered hands gripping a hold, and, in the center, a chess piece, the queen. Elena stared, her breath catching. What is this? Marcus swallowed hard. It's me. All the things I've tried. All the things I've failed at. All the things I've loved doing anyway. Because that's who I am, Elena. A work in progress. He picked up the queen, turning it between his fingers. And this is you. Because every time I thought about giving up, on pottery, on painting, on climbing, you were there, laughing, making it fun, making me want to keep trying. Elena's eyes shimmered, but she said nothing, so Marcus pressed on. I got a job offer, he said quietly. San Diego. Big promotion. And for a minute, I thought maybe I should take it and disappear before this got complicated. But then I realized something. He set the queen back in the box and met her gaze. I don't want simple. I want complicated. I want messy. I want you. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Marcus waited, heart thudding, ready for her to tell him he was too late. Instead, Elena laughed, a soft, shaky laugh that broke the tension like sunlight through clouds. You're ridiculous, she whispered, wiping at her eyes. Showing up with a box of hobbies. Marcus grinned. Authentic hobbies. She laughed again, then stepped closer, her voice trembling but sure. You didn't have to do this. I did, Marcus said. Because I promised myself I'd never lose who I am. And I promised I'd give love an honest chance if it knocked. So here I am, answering. Elena stared at him for a long moment, then reached out and took his hand. You know what? What? You're worth the mess. Marcus felt something in his chest unclench, something that had been wound tight for years. He smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't cautious. It was wide, reckless, and real. Chapter 11. Love, Unscripted. Elena stared at the box on her coffee table like it was a puzzle she wasn't sure how to solve. A cracked pottery bowl, a paintbrush, a photo, a chess queen. Pieces of Marcus's life, imperfect and honest. And Marcus himself, standing there with that steady gaze, waiting for her answer. She took a breath, then another, because this wasn't just about him. It was about her. The woman who once shrank herself to fit someone else's mold, who promised never to do that again. And here was Marcus, offering something messy and real, not a script, not a checklist. Just him. You know, she said finally, her voice soft but sure. I was ready to be mad at you forever. Marcus smiled faintly. I wouldn't blame you. But then you show up with this. She gestured at the box, laughing through the lump in her throat. Marcus, this is the weirdest, most thoughtful thing anyone's ever done for me. He grinned. Weird and thoughtful. My specialty. She laughed, shaking her head. You're impossible. True, Marcus said, stepping closer. But I'm yours, if you want me. Elena blinked, her heart doing a somersault. Yours. Marcus nodded. No scripts. No pretending. Just us. Unscripted. For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then she walked to her bookshelf, pulled down a small canvas, the one she'd painted after their first class together. The stormy landscape Marcus had accidentally ruined. She set it beside his box and smiled. Unscripted, she echoed. I like that. Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him like a tide. So, does that mean? It means, Elena said, cutting him off with a grin. You're taking me to dinner. And you're not allowed to throw anything. Marcus laughed, the sound raw and real. Deal. They ended up at a tiny Italian place with flickering candles and mismatched chairs. Marcus ordered pasta, Elena ordered wine. And somewhere between the laughter and the quiet moments, they stopped being two people circling each other and started being something more. Not perfect, not polished, but theirs. Later, as they walked back to her car under a sky full of stars, Elena slipped her hand into his. You know, she said, her tone teasing, you're still terrible at pottery. Marcus grinned. And painting. And climbing. And salsa. Marcus added. Elena laughed, squeezing his hand. Good thing you're great at showing up. Marcus smiled. And for the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't just living. He was loving. Unscripted. Unapologetic. And exactly as he was. Chapter 12. A Life in Progress. 6 months later, Marcus's apartment looked different. Not because he'd redecorated, though Elena had convinced him to swap his mismatched curtains for something less tragic, but because it felt lived in. Fuller. Warmer. There was a second coffee mug on the counter, a stack of canvases leaning against the wall, and a cat named Picasso glaring at Marcus from the armchair like he owned the place. Marcus set down a grocery bag and eyed the feline dictator. You know, I pay the rent. Picasso blinked slowly, unimpressed. Elena's laugh floated from the kitchen. Don't bother. He's immune to reason. Marcus grinned, walking in to find her stirring something on the stove. Smells amazing. Unlike your paella, she teased, flashing him a grin. Marcus groaned. You're never letting that go, are you? Not a chance, Elena said, handing him a spoon. Taste. He tasted, and his eyebrows shot up. Wow, this is edible. High praise, she said, laughing. After dinner, they curled up on the couch, Picasso wedged between them like a furry chaperone. Marcus glanced at the coffee table, where a small pottery bowl sat proudly, a callback to their first class. Remember that? He said, nodding at it. Elena smirked. How could I forget? You nearly took out Linda with a flying clay missile. Marcus chuckled. Hey, I've improved. Improved. Elena raised an eyebrow. Marcus, that bowl is still lopsided. Lopsided is character, he said solemnly. It's art. She laughed, leaning her head on his shoulder. You're ridiculous. And you love it, Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. Unfortunately, she murmured, smiling. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that spoke of shared jokes and quiet promises. Marcus thought about the box he'd brought to her apartment months ago, the cracked bowl, the paintbrush, the chess queen. A life in progress. And now, here they were, still unscripted, still imperfect, but together. Marcus tightened his arm around her, his voice low. You know, I never thought I'd say this. Elena tilted her head. Say what? That pottery class was the best bad decision I ever made. She laughed softly, and Marcus felt it. The certainty he'd been chasing all along. Not in perfection, not in plans, but in moments like this. Messy. Real. His. Epilogue. 1 year later, the splash heard, round the river. The river roared like a living thing, churning white foam against jagged rocks as Marcus tightened his grip on the paddle. Sunlight danced on the water, and the crisp mountain air smelled like pine and adrenaline. Elena sat across from him in the raft, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. This is insane, Marcus shouted over the rush. You call this fun? Elena laughed, her voice bright and fearless. You said you wanted an adventure. Marcus grinned back, heart pounding, not just from the rapids, but from the weight of the small velvet box tucked inside his life vest. He'd been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment. And this was it. Wild, messy, unforgettable, just like them. The guide's voice boomed from the back of the raft. Big drop ahead. Hold tight. Marcus swallowed hard, adrenaline surging. He waited until they cleared the drop, water spraying like shattered glass, then turned to Elena. She was laughing, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes sparkling with pure joy. Hey, Marcus yelled, his voice barely cutting through the roar. Elena. She looked at him, breathless. What? Marcus pulled the box from his vest, flipping it open to reveal the ring. A simple, elegant band that gleamed in the sunlight. Marry me. For a split second, time froze. Then Elena's eyes widened, her mouth dropping open in shock before breaking into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. Are you insane? She shouted, laughing so hard she nearly dropped her paddle. Yes. Yes, you lunatic. Marcus barely had time to grin before Elena launched herself across the raft, tackling him in a blur of wet gear and wild laughter. The raft rocked violently, and then, with a spectacular splash, they both tumbled into the icy river. Marcus surfaced first, sputtering and laughing, the current tugging at his legs. Elena popped up beside him, hair streaming, eyes blazing with joy. You're ridiculous, she shouted, splashing him. And you said yes. Marcus shot back, grinning like a fool. She wrapped her arms around his neck, water swirling around them, and kissed him hard. Cold river, pounding heart, everything else forgotten. The guide's voice echoed from the raft. Congratulations? But maybe swim to shore before you drown. Marcus laughed, holding Elena close as they kicked toward the bank. Best proposal ever, he said between breaths. Elena grinned, teeth flashing in the sunlight. Messy, unscripted, perfect. And as they dragged themselves onto the rocky shore, soaked and breathless, Marcus knew one thing for sure. Life with Elena would never be calm, but it would always be worth the ride.